Chapter 13. Strangers. Under the blazing noon sun, small dancing waves of heat rose from the bare ground. Sitting cross-legged in the shade of the open entry to their tent, Tirzah pulled a handful of gray wool across the carding comb. From the corner of her eye, she could see her mother resting against cushions, eyes closed, her head nodding against her chest. Nothing moved in the still air. Most of the men had gone to the far side of the camp to the tent of meeting, where Moses sat to judge disputes among the people. Oren had stayed behind to write on the papyrus old pastor had given him. He paused in his writing. Today, Moses is going to hear Uncle Shobal's case against the men of Dan who used his ox and cart without permission. I bet I should have gone along with the others. Tirzah hid a smile as her mother's eyes flew open to protest. That one? May he learn before it is too late. The man has no heart, no mercy. The cart was taken to pick up the wounded. I pity those men of Dan. They should have taken anyone else's cart but Shobal's to do their good work. He was born to make trouble, that brother of mine. She sighed as she settled back against the cushions. Tirzah added, Uncle Shobal is determined to make them pay. In a war, who has time for politeness? Her mother reminded them. Anyway, I can only hope he will be satisfied with a fair payment for his ox. Who could know an Amalekite arrow would pierce its throat? Tirzah stopped carting to look off toward the distant desert hills. From their tent at the north edge of camp, she could see the long horizon of empty land against the cloudless sky. Somewhere out there, small tribes of Bedouin moved about, camping where it suited them, though there was little to keep a body alive in most of that barren land. Oren saw the small line of dark figures moving toward the camp at the same time as she did. Like tiny ants in the distance, winding their way forward, a family of Bedouin was approaching. Runners were the first to greet the strangers. But by the time the company drew near, word had spread, and Moses himself came running to meet them. Tirzah stood with her mother and Oren, waiting to see who it was that had come. As the little group passed, Moses waved and gestured toward the woman, the two young men, and the old man by his side. My wife, my 2 sons, and my father-in-law have come, he shouted to all within hearing. Welcome, welcome indeed, Tirzah's mother called in return. As the caravan passed, she asked, Isn't she lovely? The woman was tall and dark-skinned. Her unveiled face revealed a straight nose, large, dark eyes, and a wide mouth whose smile showed white, even teeth. To Tirzah, she was beautiful. Moses' sons, too, were dark-skinned with the wiry look of those used to the hard life of the desert. From the richness of his robes, Tirzah guessed that Moses' father-in-law was a chieftain among his own people. Jerioth had come to stand beside Tirzah, her hand resting lightly on Tirzah's shoulder. It is good that Moses has his family with him, she said. Even a man such as he needs the comfort of his own. Jerioth's hand tightened gently. Tirzah, my little dove, one day you will make a home for your own family, eh? Tirzah felt her face grow warm. Jerioth laughed lightly. Yes, you too will know the joy I speak of, she said. Shall we go and make ready for the men who will come home hungry as bears for some of our comforts? Tirzah nodded her head and followed Jerioth. I'm coming too, her mother said, rising awkwardly. Oh my, this child kicks. Tirzah ran and placed a hand on her mother's swollen stomach to feel the baby's movement, but she was too late. Jerioth waited for them to catch up. I think, Leah, it will be a boy from the way you carry. Yes, Jerioth, I think so too. Another man-child to comfort and cook for. Her mother laughed. Tirzah bit her lip and turned her face away. She wanted a sister, not a brother this time. At the tent of meeting, a dozen or so men stood about in small groups. Come back tomorrow, Aaron had told those who still waited for their cases to be heard. Relief eased the knot in Ram's stomach. As the 3 men from Dan brushed past Ram's father and his Uncle Shobal, their grim faces showed no signs of softening. Ram sighed. As family, they had all come to hear the outcome of the case. Neither his father nor any of the relatives had been able to make his uncle change his mind. He would demand full restitution and make a profit out of the business. Shobal's face was red with anger. An outrage it is. All day we waited for our turn, and just as I am called, court is dismissed. Shobal turned to Ram's father, who stood nearest him. So this is justice, impersonal, impartial justice? Now, Shobal, the man's wife and children have come with his father-in-law. Surely you can't expect him not to go to them. Besides, this will give you time to think over what I've said. Ram knew that his father had tried to persuade his uncle to be satisfied with some small sum for the death of the ox. Shobal gestured to his sons to follow and strode on ahead. It was plain that he had no intention of changing his mind. Abishur lingered just long enough to whisper to Ram, It's no use. The ox was worth less than he wants for it, but there is nothing we can do once he makes up his mind to make a profit. Ram gripped his friend's shoulder. Never mind. Moses will judge wisely tomorrow, and then you can forget about the whole thing. In his heart, Ram knew that peace would not come to Abishur's tent for weeks unless Shobal won his full case. Ram watched his cousin leave, his eyes downcast, the picture of misery. I am the lucky one, he thought, turning to follow the straight back of his father. Unconsciously, Ram straightened his shoulders and matched his stride to his father's. The afternoon heat burned into his body, and he was suddenly thirsty. It was time to fetch water, and Tirzah lifted her empty water skin, balancing it against her hip. The heat of the day was less intense now, almost pleasant, so she walked quickly. Abihail and the others would wait for her at the water. They would be full of news about the strangers, since her cousin's tent was quite close to that of Moses and Miriam. When Tirzah arrived, Maha and Abishur were among the ones who had already drawn water. Abishur's clear, light laugh rang above Maha's groaning complaint as the girls lifted the full water skins. Oop! Maha grunted. Men should carry these things. Tirzah smiled at her. Like Ephon, Maha was as strong as any boy her age. The real problem is you're bottom heavy, Maha, Abihail teased. As for you, she said, turning to face Tirzah, you're becoming a turtle. Whenever Abihail teased, her eyes danced, but her tongue could bite just the same. It was the one thing about Abihail that bothered Tirzah. She worked quickly while they talked. Did either of you see Moses' family? I caught a glimpse of the woman as they passed. Maha answered at once. Her name is Zipporah, and the boys are Gershom and Eliezer. The father-in-law is Jethro, priest of Midian. She paused for breath and was about to go on when Abihail interrupted. The more important thing, Abihail said in a hushed tone, is that she's almost black. Just think of it. Moses married to a woman like that, a Midianite. Abihail stopped dramatically. But, Tirzah exclaimed, she's beautiful. The woman was dark-skinned, a soft, shiny darkness, Tirzah thought, like a dark night sky with faint stars shining in it. The point is, she's a Midianite, Abihail insisted. Anyway, even if she is good-looking in a primitive way, she isn't exactly our kind of beauty. She's already married, so who cares about looks? Maha added. Tirzah grinned. Maha's interest in beauty extended only to how much one needed to land a husband, no more, no less. In her case, she was counting on her thick, shining braid of hair to do the job. No, listen, Abihail protested. I even heard some of the women saying that Miriam and Aaron are not exactly happy to see Moses' wife. They said the look on Miriam's face was downright disgust, though she hid it soon enough when the woman greeted her. Why would Miriam and Aaron not want to see the woman? Tirzah puzzled. What was Miriam disgusted about? Abihail opened her thickly lashed eyes widely. Why? Because she is a Midianite, of course. She certainly isn't one of our people. After all, Moses is our leader. The skin was full, and Tirzah balanced it carefully as they walked back to camp. Other girls and women passed, some with empty skins, others on their way home with full ones. The chatter of voices was all around them. Tirzah's mind drifted, and she wondered if she would see Mary today. She had not seen the little Egyptian girl drawing water yet, but she was sure that the girl must fetch water for herself and old Hannah. A thought slipped into her head. What would Abihail think of Mary? She brushed the question aside like a bothersome cobweb. Abihail was bubbling over with news of the new robe her mother was making. It was a well-known fact that Abihail's mother, Ruth, was the best weaver among the women of the tribe. Maha sighed and smoothed the crumpled plain stuff of her robe that did nothing to hide or enhance her large figure. Listen, she said. Tomorrow I'm making soup with meat from the conies that father found this morning. So if you want some, you had better come early or it will be gone. Maha was a good cook. Tirzah could vouch for that. Maha, old Hannah says that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Have you invited the twins? She asked innocently. Maha had already sized them up as among the possible choices for a future husband. Maha laughed. Maybe I won't tell you who I am inviting. They had come to the parting of the path, and Maha went cheerily on her way. Abihail lingered a moment longer. Tirzah, you know I love Abishur and no other forever. Please, please tell me every word he says if he comes to your campfire tonight. Mother won't hear of my leaving the tent after the evening meal. She thinks I am safe only when the sun is beating down or she is right beside me. I can hardly bear it. You are so lucky to have Abishur for a cousin. Tirzah quickly pointed out that it was Abihail who would be lucky not to be a cousin when the time came for matchmaking. See you tomorrow then, she called as Abihail left. At the doorway of the tent, Oren still sat working on his papyrus. Tirzah put away her water jug and flung herself down beside him. As she settled herself cross-legged, Oren tossed something onto her lap. It was a small, perfectly chiseled reed pipe. She held it up to examine its leaf pattern carving. Oren held up another identical to the one in her hands. Benj made them, he said. Made one for each of us. Oren put his to his mouth and blew gently, a soft whistling note. Tirzah's made a sound like a sick raven. Still, it was something, and maybe with practice, who knew? I've always wanted to play one of these, she said. Yes, I know, Benja's quiet voice added from behind her. Tirzah swung round to face him. How did you know that? Benj looked pleased with himself, his mouth grinning wildly. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I read your thoughts, he teased. Thanks. It's great. She picked up the new pipe to try it once more. This time there was a note and then another that she thought she recognized. While she struggled to play, Benj listened, turning his eyes up to the sky every now and then at a sour note. When Benj left, he was grinning. She watched him moving easily down the path and wondered, how did he know I wanted a flute?